Hey everyone, today we're making hot cross buns. Fluffy, full of fruit, lots of spice. One of my favorite baked treats around Easter time. There are lots of theories about how hot cross buns came into existence. My favorite one being that they were baked on Good Friday and given to the poor. So we're going to be adding a tangzhong to the recipe, which is where we pre-cook a portion of the flour with some water. And this just lets us add extra moisture into the recipe for a softer, fluffier bun that lasts a bit longer. Alright, so we're going to start by preparing the tangzhong. We're going to add our water to a small saucepan along with the flour. And before turning the heat on, we just want to give this a stir just so that everything is nicely combined. And turn it up to medium heat. I'm just going to keep stirring this because it will cook very quickly. The tangzhong creates a thick paste, and this is going to allow us to add more moisture than we ever could by adding like water or milk directly to the dough, because it's going to be in a paste. So we're just stirring this until it starts to gelatinize. You'll see that it starts to thicken, and as you scrape you'll get some like thicker parts. We just want to keep cooking this until everything is the same texture. And that is all the same consistency. So as soon as that is thickened all the way through, we're just going to take it off the heat. And what I like to do is just press a piece of cling film to the surface and put it in the fridge to cool down fully. Next up, I'm just adding the yeast to our milk. And you just want to stir this to wet the yeast. I'm using instant yeast because it's just easier to use. So remember, when it's active yeast, you have to activate it. So some people will say it's refreshing, reviving, whatever. It's just dissolving the outer layer of the yeast that has dried out and died on the outside. And then to our mixing bowl, we're adding our flour, salt, brown sugar, and spices. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. So we're now adding our tangzhong, which is cooled down, and our yeast and milk mixture. Turn this onto low speed. And we just want to mix this until it starts to come together. As soon as it's coming together, I'm adding the extra virgin olive oil. Using some olive oil spray or just some olive oil. So we've got a really nice, beautiful, elastic dough. And I like to fold my fruits in rather than mix them in. I mean, when they're dry, they do tend to manage okay, but I like to just do it by hand. But you can just add them in the last stage of mixing. You'll see it doesn't take long to incorporate them. Just a little bit of extra kneading on the bench. And all that lovely fruit is nicely combined. So I like to always have a nice scraper handy. I've got my favorite metal one from my friend Teresa. This next step is called the bulk ferment. So I'm just using some olive oil spray from Australia. I'm just putting my dough into this nicely oiled dish, and I need it to double. So if you look at that volume, it's going to come right up to the top of this. This is our bulk ferment, where we're going to get this initial burst of yeast activity, some aeration that's going to happen as the yeast produces carbon dioxide. Just put a plate on top. I'm going to let that sit for at least 45 minutes to an hour, but I need it to double in volume. All right, so I've just prepared a tray. Our dough has doubled. So most doughs, when you have really good gluten development, shouldn't be too sticky, especially not these like sweet yeasted or sweet risen doughs. So I use a bit of spray oil on the bench, and I'm turning out our dough. It feels so good. It feels like a pillow. So just knocking out the air from that, and I'm gonna weigh 75-gram balls. Now the key to getting perfect even size and consistency is weighing your buns, because it doesn't matter how accurate your eyesight is, you will not get a perfect bun, especially when you have inclusions like we do in this dough. In a bakery, you do know exactly when someone hasn't weighed their pieces, because that 5 or 10 grams on a bun will actually make a big difference. So we have 12 balls. Often when we get a really small bit of offcut, what works really well is to roll it out into a noodle and then add a tiny bit of dough by cutting it into really little pieces, and then add one piece of this leftover to each of our buns. And then we end up with all even pieces and no leftover. So we want to pick the cleanest side for the bottom, and then we want to press it down and then fold all the corners into the middle. And that's going to produce a smooth dough on top. If you want to take it one step further, you flip it over, and then using your hands on the bench, kind of circle around, pushing the ball of dough from side to side, and this builds the tension on the surface. So if your dough feels a bit sticky, use a bit of spray oil, or feel free to dust your surface with a little bit of flour. So we want to go 3 by 4 and about 2 centimeters apart, so that when the buns prove up, they're going to be kissing each other and joined. You can also make them individual buns by giving them at least an inch in between. So we've got our lovely 12 buns. If you find any kind of large pieces of raisins, feel free to just pull them off and tuck them underneath. These can and probably will burn, so better to tuck them in underneath. The dough is tacky, but it's not sticky, so if you work quickly with it, everything should come up really nice. So we want to keep these in a moist environment, so in a cold oven, not yet switched on, with a pan of boiling water underneath, and this just generates some steam and keeps the whole chamber nice and moist. And then we can take them out, preheat the oven, and then bake them. So when they're fully proofed, they should be touching on the sides, and then when we bake them, that little gap in the middle will close up. While our buns are proving, we can prepare our bun wash. So this is just dense sugar syrup that we brush onto the buns straight out of the oven, infused with a lot of spice. So into a small saucepan, I'm pouring in water, the caster sugar, muscovado sugar with cloves and cinnamon. So just bringing this up to a rolling boil. There we go, that's our bun wash. The other thing we'll prepare while our buns are proving is our cross mixture, which is just a flour paste of water and flour. I'm just using a fork, though you could use a whisk if you were making a larger amount. So just mixing this until we have a paste with no lumps, and that's it. You just want it to be smooth, so if you have to add a few extra milliliters of water, that's fine. I also like to add just a small pinch of salt. You kind of want it to, when it falls, for these peaks to very slowly fall in on themselves and slowly collapse, but not totally collapse, so that you do have some structure that stays on the buns. And then we're just putting it into a piping bag. We just need quite a small tube, about 3 to 4 millimeters. And then we're just going to leave this aside until we are ready. So our buns have doubled in size, and I've taken them out after about 40 minutes. This can go up to about 45, 50, maybe an hour if it's cold. So 20 minutes before they're fully proofed, they're touching in the middle. We want to take them out, preheat the oven, and then pipe our cross mixture. I'm just going across. Then they can go in the oven. You know the buns are ready when they're really nice and golden, and there's a good contrast between the white cross and the golden bun. As soon as they come out of the oven, we want to glaze them. So this glaze is just infused with heaps of spice flavor. It's going to lock in some moisture in the bun. Now, you don't have to put heaps of spice in your bun glaze, but I think it's really, really tasty.